All right, welcome back to another episode of the Kronos Group Podcast. I am Jerry Brazie. This is we record this on Thursday night. Typically, I have Matt and Steve with me, and I believe they will be showing up. But right now, y'all got to just listen to me here for a while we get this on the road. And once they come in and are ready, then they will, maybe I'll invite them in. Will depend. We'll see how I'm doing, how things going. I want to pop this off and get started talking about, I do podcasts all of the time. I'm on a mission this year to do 365. So that means that I'm going to do about 200 of my own, or of our own, I should say, for the Kronos Group, and then another 165 odd guest spots. So today, as an example, I did 3, 2 of my own, 1 as a guest spot. And in doing that, I get to talk to all kinds of really neat people. I get to have all kinds of really good conversations about all sorts of things. And so as I have these, particularly when I have guests come on, the guests have opinions and ideas. And of course, we go back and forth when we're talking about it. But I thought I would bring some of those subjects to talk about as we get going that's happening in the world. A lot of really, and the things that are happening in the world, try and tie it back then to what's happening as it pertains to business and our perspective on how it pertains to our daily lives and our business lives in particular. But some of the things going on that we're going to cover today, the big news, obviously, anybody who pays attention to these sorts of things, if you're into the news at all, if you're into politics at all, if you're into geopolitics at all, I mean, these things, there is so many things happening in the time of Trump and the Trump presidency. It seems like every day there's so much news that it just can't be kept up with. This guy, regardless of how you think about him, he is nothing if not prolific. So we had Davos going on this week, and there's Matty Boy checking in from the car, it looks like. Dude, are you in the car?
I am in the car because I was actually going to do this outside of a coffee shop, and come to find out they have outdoor speakers. So it was a ton of noise, and I didn't want to feel like editing this podcast with a bunch of background sound.
So Trump anybody's been following the news, we're talking about Davos over there in Switzerland and the World Economic Forum from a business owner's perspective and somebody that has been involved in business and an interest in politics over the last 25 years. I can tell you that what I saw this week in Davos, Switzerland is unlike anything I have ever seen. And again, this is not an endorsement of Trump per se. This is, though, an opinion and or endorsement of what he is doing and what the government generally is doing in the United States and around the world, because all of those things matter. So what we're going to talk about, what actually happened in the world this week as it relates to Trump and Davos, and kind of what he said and what I think it signals and matters to those of us that are operating businesses every day. And really, realistically, to what's going on in the world generally, these things are going to impact every person right down to the bottom. In fact, I think more specifically, the things that Trump is trying to do is going to affect the middle class. Remember, the poor are getting richer. The rich are getting super richer. And all of that money over the last 5 to 10 years has come out of, the 5 to 10 years specifically, has come out of the pocket of the middle class. As the government spends more money, that money goes to 2 places. A large majority of it goes to the rich, and they become super rich, and they become fabulously rich. But also the poor continue to get richer. The money comes out of primarily the middle class because the middle class is where all of the taxes get paid. So you hear stories all the time, you hear numbers bandied about that the billionaires, the top 10% pay 50 or 60%, and that is absolutely true, they do. But if we tax them all of their money in order to get what we want, it's not nearly enough. You're going to have to dip into the middle class. That's where the big dollars are. And so when there are the kind of spending that we see where they're printing money and it's going out like sailors on a weekend, all of that money is going to one of 2 places, the ultra rich, and that's probably 2/3 of it, but the poor are getting the other third through all of the welfare and all of the benefits and all the things that you see. And so the middle class is where they get pinched, and that's who needs to be listening to what's happening or needs to be watching what's happening in the world. Because when you have those things going on the way that we do, and you're getting pinched left and right, the things that Trump is doing over in other parts of the world, like he did in Davos, insisting that people pay their fair share, pay their way. Other governments were going to stop supporting you. You need to support yourself. That means that the economy of the United States goes up. We saw 4.5%. They're calling for 5.5% economic growth, GDP growth this year. 5% to even touch a 5 in GDP with a $30 trillion GDP is insanity. It's gigantic dollars. That means that there's more money in the system for you and I simply by that growth. This isn't the government putting the money in. This is you and I generating those economics, because the government is taking less of our money. Now, that doesn't mean you're paying less in taxes, but they're spending less money, less deficit. And that's going to put money in your pocket. So Trump at Davos was a big deal this week. AI reality check. I had 2 people on the podcast just in the last week about AI that are AI and marketing specialists. So I have opinions on that. The productivity versus the hype. We'll talk about that. If we get to it, we'll talk about ownership pressure and the human cost of leadership. What's it cost to actually make and create and have leaders, and the pressure that comes with being that owner. A lot of people don't understand that. I had an in-depth conversation earlier today about that on a podcast. Young men are shifting right, in particular post-COVID. Why do we think that is? What's the reasons for that? I have my opinions on that, and we can talk about that. I'm sure the other guys do too. Fatherhood, responsibility, and structure is on the list. Maddie, this is something that he's got to learn about, and it's coming up. And everyone knows, if you listen to me at all, we preach it left and right. I know Steve feels the same way. Another topic, number 7, how culture shows up inside of businesses and teams, right? So what impact does culture have on teams? I got asked a question earlier today about the American with Disabilities Act, and what was my take on how do we improve people with disabilities coming on the and in business, and what can businesses do to improve that? I bet most of you will not have any idea, wouldn't be able to think what my answer would be, because I promise you it's not what the average person that sits at home and watches television thinks about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then to finish all that up, what would we do actually right now as operators, giving all of that information? So again, I might get to all of those. I might get to a few of them. We got Maddie on the line. We're going to start off with what Trump did in Davos, Switzerland, and something in particular. He went and he said in as calm a voice as possible that all of the other countries need to start paying their own way. The United States has, since World War II, and World War II, think about this, we had the opportunity in World War II to just take over the whole world. It was at our fingertips. What Russia ended up with, we gave them. So the size that the Soviet Union was, we gave them. And again, everybody says the Americans helped win the war. The Russians went through 20 million people liberating Europe. That should not be forgotten. But at the same time, then they received that gigantic pieces of land that they had both prior to the Russian breakup and post the Russian breakup. America gave that up. We certainly could have gone in and taken over Germany and Japan and most of Europe, for that matter, really all of Europe, but we did not. We chose to let it grow on its own. The problem was we supplemented it. We subsidized it. And so as an example, there are no cars, American cars for the most part, in Europe because it's just too expensive to import them. Meanwhile, they're importing here left and right. There are no cars in Japan that aren't Japanese cars simply because it's too expensive to import them. So not only did we build their economies, not only did we bring back their world, but at the same time, then they put a bunch of restrictions on us and made all of us Americans middle class, the ones that are doing all the work, the ones that are paying all the taxes. We end up paying all of their bills for them. So they have these, the Europeans love to talk about their welfare state. They love to talk about all the options they have and how they take such good care of all of their people. Yeah, they can do that simply on the backs of Americans because, and this is where the tariffs come into play, they have the money to do that, although they run huge deficits themselves. They have the money to do that because they don't pay for their own defense. So imagine if you didn't ever have to pay for your own defense as a country. Where can all the rest of that money go? But if all of a sudden you got to take 5%, 6%, 8% of GDP, and you got to start plugging it in to, remember, these companies grow 1, 2, 3% a year if they're lucky, GDP, particularly in Europe. They're like 1.5% this year or last year. And now all of a sudden you're telling them, well, you got to start plugging 5% of your GDP into your own defense. See, these countries don't exist without the United States. The United States provides all of that coverage for them. They don't exist. If you can't exist without the largest of another country, well, then you really don't have a country, do you? But the problem is these guys over 70 years have got so used to it that they're constantly pushing back on us, the good guys, the guys who are paying all of their bills. They're the ones that they push back like we're the big bad guys because we want them to defend themselves. And then I don't want to have to pay for them to do their program in Germany and do their program in France and do their program in England, because Americans, we're all stupid anyway because nobody teaches us our own history or the history of the world, which all those guys that I just talked about, they all hate each other anyway. For long before America was ever a country, them dudes were beating up on each other just inside and out. England was fighting with France and Napoleon was fighting with the Germans and the Germanic Wars, and Spain controlled the world at one point. I mean, these guys, there's parts of Spain that they fight each other. You go over to Britain, you go over to Scotland, you go over to Ireland. Them dudes, the Christians and the Catholics, been fighting each other for hundreds of years over there. I mean, that entire continent is nothing but war. They do nothing but fight with each other. Then we come in, we bring a calm to it, but we're paying for it. What the hell does my money doing going to somebody in Ireland? I could care less about those people over and above my own country and my own people. That is the point that Donald Trump is making. Love him or hate him, I think that is a significant change, and one that is a long time coming, as we need to right the ship economically here in the United States. And if we hit 5% GDP on $30 trillion, even 4.5% like what we have, is the amount of change that we will see in our country at 5% GDP will be astounding. And it will be unlike anything anybody less than 45 years old will have ever experienced in their life. Matt, I don't know what you might think of all this, or if you have any information on that at all, but given that brief rundown, or I guess that little long-winded rundown I just did, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I want to ask Jerry, based off of you explaining this just now, what is there a sense of entitlement from the other countries, and knowing that we are always going to provide by the U.S. point of view? Or is this something that just history repeats itself, and kind of like you said, over and over again, we've had to bail countries out before? Now, is it this sense of entitlement where they know that we're going to come to their aid? And after that World Economic Forum, what was the takeaways for all these other countries that now have to battle it out when it comes to what money is coming from where?
The United States has not done a good job at all of educating our children over 50 years. Since the advent of the Department of Education under Carter in the 1970s, it has been nothing but downhill from there. And the stuff that they teach kids, I mean, forget about teaching us our own history. They don't teach them shop class. They don't have PE classes anymore. They don't have home economics. They don't try to teach them how to budget.
Personal finance.
Personal finance. Yeah. All of those things that were when Steve and I were kids that were common, those things are all gone, and it's replaced largely with to the extent that they learn anything, which is a misnomer since the advent of the creation of the Department of Education, which was done by Jimmy Carter in order to gain the support of the teachers' unions. He created the Department of Education. Across the board, money has skyrocketed and results have gone down. So we know that. But specifically to your question, we don't understand here how special we are in America. Americans don't understand, young Americans in particular, don't appreciate what a great country we are, what an uncommon country we are historically. How uncommon? It's never existed before. Never in world history has someone done what we did, which is World War II, and we essentially saved the world with Russia. And Russia lost 20 million people, far more than we ever did. But we came in, and instead of putting the heavy hand down and say, you're going to start remitting taxes to us right away. And it's our way or the highway. We came in and we let them proliferate from our largesse. We propped them up. We supported them. So the things that Germany talks about now are all based on what we've given them over the last 70 years. And they've done nothing but take. They do not give. They are like spoiled children. They're like Canada, born on third base, right? Canada ceases to exist as a country without the United States. They were born on third base, but they think they went through all of the hardships. It'd be like you, Matt, saying, well, I went through the same stuff that you did because we both ended up in the same spot. Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's not nonsensical, right? But that is how Europe is. Europe is a dying continent. They are multiple economies, and every one of them is being strangled out. And the second Donald Trump says, and America says, to hell with Donald Trump, forget him as the president. I, as an American, want to take care of my Americans first, and I don't want to have $38 trillion in debt. So the Europeans need to take care of themselves. And all this bravado that they push back and they're acting all tough. Trump sat in there and told them to their faces exactly what they are, exactly what they're doing wrong, exactly what he would do if he were them to fix it. And they laugh at him. And the reality is, without us, there is no them. It is going to be hard to see what happens to those people once the United States stops footing the bill for everything. And Canada thinks they get to talk tough and thinks that they get to act tough, but they're not even a country unto themselves without the benefits of being connected to and being an ally of the United States. That's just reality. So you hit it on the head, Matt. It's like a second or a third generation child born to a billionaire grandfather that gets to drive around in the Ferrari, gets to have all of these things, but never earned any of it. Mm-hmm. That's what Europe is. And Europe likes to talk tough like they're special and like they've done. I mean, Europe is the birthplace of modern art and language. And, again, you go to Greek and over in those parts of the world where literally democracy was created, but they are so far from what they were. They're living on their laurels. They live in a museum. They drive past buildings that are older than the United States is by 1,000 years, and they see them every day, and they think that is them. They think the people that were them, that built their country, that gave them what they have, is what they are today. And the reality is that they are sad little people like New Yorkers. I love how New Yorkers always talk about how tough they are and all these things that they've done and don't come to New York. Meanwhile, you dudes can't drink out of a 16-ounce cup because the government says you can't. You're so over-regulated, you do nothing about it. Nothing ever changes. We all are. I'm from the Northwest, Portland, Oregon. There's no more regulation. Go to LA, go to San Francisco, go to Seattle, go to New York, go to Boston, go to Chicago. These cities are overran with regulation. You're not tough. You guys can't do anything on your own. You can't lift up and go on a subway without somebody giving you permission. Europe times 1,000, though. At least in the United States, we still have some semblance of freedom. Europe has none of that, and they are dying out. And this push by Donald Trump is a push, and what they're getting wrong is the spoiled rich kid that's been living in the house forever and has never done anything on his own. You need to go learn. Get out. You got to go figure it out for yourself. Donald Trump is not saying, America is not saying that you need to go and fail and we're going to take that away and we're going to pull the rug out from under you. What we're saying is you need to stand on your own 2 feet. You need to be independent of us and quit taking what we have and what we've been giving you for 70 years. And as an American and as a proud American, I will say, it'd be nice if you showed a little bit of humility doing it. It'd be nice if you showed a little bit of, I sure appreciate all of the sacrifices you Americans have done, both in treasure, i.e. our work and the tax dollars that have been taken from us, and in lives lost and battles won in order for you guys over there to have what you have.
Yeah, that's it. That's all down to what I was thinking is there's just a uneducated background for my generation and especially even younger that it doesn't even pop up in their head as a forethought in their mind. And that's right. Where I've heard enough about this, and I'm kind of on that cusp within the millennial going into an older age that I know of the effects of history and the moments that are honestly, like you said, we have to be so grateful for because of the country and being in a capitalist country compared to other countries that don't have those freedoms, we only see the freedom based off of, oh, well, this is taken away from us. Oh, we can't say this on social media without being um, uh, uh, judged or
Jailed.
misconstrued.
In Europe, they jail you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Yeah.
where I was like, for us Americans, I feel like, and even for the younger kids in our generation in the US, there's just no mindset or understanding of how it could be different. And everyone's just living within their own shoes, not within other people's shoes, and saying, oh, that's actually a nice freedom that I have that I just take for granted every day.
Yep.
It reminds me of shout out to old Maxie, fixing to be doing his stuff up there in Missouri in the cold and the snow here real quick. That one time you told us a story about, hey, Dad, are we rich?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said to them, they asked me my kids asked me if we were rich. And I said, who's we? Now, there's no we in this program. There's me.
What was their facial expression?
Oh, they were younger at the time, so they laughed and they kind of got it, right? But they remembered all the same, right? Yeah, there's no we, and in this context, that's Europe, and that's the thing, Matt. I mean, Matt, as a 33-year-old, and you're working on having kids, and you're going to bring kids into this world, and $37 trillion in debt. Are you happy that it's been some $20 trillion in world defense that we have paid out, while over and above what those guys have paid? Are you happy that you're paying for the medical care system that they have in England because it's subsidized from us here in the United States in the 35% tax bracket, or taxes that you're going to have to pay federally? Are you happy that money then that gets shipped out to other countries rather than staying here to make sure that and to guarantee the life, the love, and the happiness and the pursuit of all of those things for your children and your grandchildren going forward in the next generations? I'm guessing the answer is no.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of these countries, it reminds me of the video that I've seen several times where it's like a little chihuahua in the house barking at a big Great Dane on the other side. In the United States is that glass door. It looks like, hey, I'm all tough and all this. And they've just really forgotten all it does. You slide that door open and all of a sudden, things get real. And I also think about, I think part of what makes us, I was thinking about this, you're talking, trying to catch up to where you were probably talking about, and I'm sure it's Davos, was the idea that I was thinking about, we're 250 years old. So it's recent that we even existed as a nation, and what we fought and what we went through to build that. I think we still carry that. Whereas a lot of the European countries, a lot of countries around the world, they've just existed for centuries. I mean, a long time.
They have the older brother mentality. I'm older than you, so I still have the rights, even though you work harder and do everything.
They're so far removed from what it takes to exist. And I think we're still riding on that as Americans. 250 years is really relatively recent, in comparison to a lot of other nations that exist, especially of any magnitude. There might be some few, areas that just became their own little independence, no more than one of our states became its own little country, but highly dependent on others. But I think they forget, plus, like you said, World War II. I mean, it's a totally different geopolitical map if we don't step into Europe or into Asia. Totally different. There's a few of them that appreciate it and, build great, relationships with us because they realize, we're the goose that lays the golden egg. And I think some of them just get, a little bit to where they're just feeling their oats and thinking that, and they just forget that because they haven't had to really fight. They fought unsuccessfully. Britain, France, all of them, they would have all fallen without our help.
To that end, I don't want it to be lost. I mean, I'm 100% America first and an American patriot. But I want to make sure that we're arguing. I want people to understand at least where I come from on this, which is that Europe is lost, and it's gone so far. But ever since World War II, living off of our largesse, that's allowed them to over-regulate, right? They have over-police. They have governments that are far, far too big. They're spending way more money than they have. They, again, are pretending like they're the big dog when they are the little dog. They are living off of laurels from generations who fought for what they have from hundreds and thousands of years ago, and they've squandered all of it living off the teat of the Americans. That's not good for them, and that's not good for America. At the same time, American independence died when that bomb went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. That's when American independence ended, and this giant, massive government that we have today, this institutional state, combined with the corporate integration of government and business, has given us now, all of these years later, 70, 80 years into the future, this Goliath government, a government that has never been seen before in world history. So not only do we have we done things never seen before in world history, we conquered the world and then we gave it back to them, step back, and then we paid for them to recover, and then we let them get over on us for 70 years. That's never happened before. But in particular, while we did it to our own people also. So we are as guilty as the Europeans. The difference is we have a mindset and an approach to the world as Americans, largely, that the Europeans don't have. And so we've been able to, even as it becomes more and more oppressive, continue to push forward because it's in our nature in a way that it is not in their nature. But that in no means the biggest offender of government overreach and largesse in the world, easily by several factors, is the U.S. government. And the Americans have sat back and have decided that they're going to let this play out and not try to bring the government to heel. Again, I am neither a big proponent of Donald Trump, nor am I a big opponent of Donald Trump. I am an American first, and anything that comes good for America is then good for me. But if there's no movement on this amount of money that is owed, and no changes to the cost structure and the amount of money that's being pissed down holes, then we are lost. I don't care how many things you do to try to fix it. The end is going to come. And so America has enough problems, I guess I should say. I'm not going to let it off the hook, other than they are American problems. And America's money should be staying in America to fight Americans' problems, and we deal with our own, and Europe can go deal with their own issues.
Would they be able to without that money?
No. I mean, they're going to have to, no, because it'll all crash and burn. There's England in particular. I mean, really Spain, France, Germany. I mean, Germany's gone. Germany, I think I saw today, has 23% or some number less power that they generate today than they did in 2000. Because those idiots shut down all their nuclear power facilities. The new chancellor is against it, and he's trying to bring them back online. But the old ones, they brought in all of the immigration. They ruined everything that there is to be European, and it took them only 20 years of morons running the ship. But we've got a lot of morons running our ship also, and we're seeing that we'll go into the next subject here, which is young men and culture. I was reading, the Wall Street Journal had a thing about young men drifting right as trust in institutions just continue to decline. Exactly what I'm talking about. But these are institutions that should not exist. The Financial Times of London's talking about Gen Z men and women are diverging politically. That makes sense. Men are going hard conservative. And there was a research that came out from Pew a couple of months ago about young men, and Matt, I'm going to include you in this, have lower optimism, and they're delaying those adulthood milestones that people usually do. And so, or that men historically have done, in particular post-COVID. And the reality is that post-COVID, they disrupted the work, and they disrupted school, and they disrupted everybody's routines. And overnight, these rules changed that have never changed back. Again, if we went to 2019 spending at the federal government, we would have a balanced budget, but we continue to have a COVID plus government because nothing ever goes backwards. So we spent those trillions, and then we just kept it and we lopped it on to the front of the budget. So the same amount of money is getting spent that we lived that at the height of COVID to fight that pandemic, and the money never goes back. There you go. That's how they steal from you. So you got rules that changed overnight. Authority, of course, during COVID was arbitrary, came out of nowhere, didn't make any sense. Local, county, city, state, federal. Inflation, I mean, we don't even have to talk about what inflation did to us over the last 2.5, 3 years. And then all the narratives for culture changed in terms of, I think for a good way in some ways. We didn't our eyes were closed for so many people about what those institutions really did, about how captured the medical institution was, how captured the schools were. We got to see all of that because of remote viewing, and parents got to see what a nightmare was going on in their schools. And so the second subject I have for us to talk about was that, just children, men in particular, and what's going on in the world. And kind of that's my read on some of the causes. So who wants to take that one first?
I'll let Steve go for it, knowing that he had 3 boys.
Yeah, you're talking reference to the COVID thing as far as it shutting that down.
Yeah, just why are young men becoming conservative?
Oh, I think it's a wake up call. I mean, I think they see the stuff, and to your point, what COVID allowed things to see, and there's a lot more transparency. I mean, obviously, social media has its downsides, but one thing it has done is create an avenue that if we didn't have that, they could just be telling us whatever it is and they just believe it and keep going that way. But there's enough independent, kind of like the young man that exposed all the stuff in Minnesota and kind of the snowball effect that created. And that's just one individual. Realize I can go out and just start report asking questions, which gets people that are hiding something hate questions. People that really want to grow and develop and become better versions of whatever it is. They love questions, even if it's questions about themselves. And when you're trying to protect something, you hate the questions. I sense it in my job in sales. The people that really don't want to deal with the situation for how it is or what they're trying to, the mind frame they have trying to protect the way they are, they get uncomfortable with the questions. And then you got some people you talk to are ready to actually do something constructive, make a difference in their lives for themselves, and they invite the questions because it helps them see things the way they are. And so I think a lot of it with the young men, you might have mentioned it, Jerry. I can't think of where I heard it somewhere, talking about the number of young men that still live at home with their parents. Mm-hmm. That don't even, they're not even out on their own. It's the highest it's ever been. And it was kind of surprising that many still live at home, and they, talking about overall just, the lack of drive. And I think there's a lot of it. I would think the uncertainties there. We get a lot more exposure to how bad things are, and they keep doing the negative news. And I think it creates a sense of subconscious fear into trying things, getting things, going out there and trying things, doing things in life that you and I just knew, hey, this is what you do. You get married, you have kids, you figure it out. And now it's like so much more, you got to be careful. COVID really heightened that because it kind of creates that sense is you got to be careful about everything because the world's a dangerous place. Well, the world's always been a dangerous place, relatively speaking. You just went out there and made it work. And I think so much more gets planted in their minds now about be careful, wait, or also just do your own thing for so long. So the next thing you know, you're in your 30s, still doing your own things, finding yourself. And to your point, Jerry, you want to find yourself, get married, have a kid, because you're not going to find yourself just hanging out with your bros all the time without some family structure that gives you a sense of purpose that you never knew would exist anymore, whether it's just first getting married. Secondly, just having kids, period, gives you that sense of drive, that purpose that goes beyond whatever government would tell you or whatever news would tell you, because, you've got this little, nation, which is you, your wife, and your kids that you got to protect and provide for. And I think that's getting lost in our culture, and it's been purposely. I don't think it's an accident. I don't think it's like, well, we didn't realize this. I think there's a definitely a concerted effort to make this happen. To what end result, I'm not totally sure about. But you can definitely see its effects. And it's pretty quick, to your point. I mean, some of this stuff, like you said, about them in just 20 years, we've seen it. I go back thinking, well, 20 years, well, that was only 2006. You're a couple of years before the housing crash because of the way they handle the financial market. So I think a lot of that has to do with just so much is put out there to them to create this negative effect and make a fear. And then wanting to go out and try things, do things. And I think it just starts first, if you want to weaken a nation, weaken the families, weaken the family structure. And it starts to break down there. It sounds, well, that's just a little simplistic. Well, I mean, some things aren't as complicated as they want to make it out to be. And that's one thing they'll do. In order to make it seem like it's really hard to figure out, you need our help, they'll make it complicated. Tax codes, it's not that hard somebody, but they make it so massive that people just like, okay, I'll just pay whatever it is. Let me have the easiest little thing I can fill out just to get my taxes this year, and not realizing, depending on just a few little changes, and I'm learning that myself, you could get to where you don't have to. They're built in. It's not illegal. It's built into the system, but it was designed for the people that would actually know what's going on, knowing that the masses wouldn't know what to do. So they're just going to go along with the program.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, and
I,
the more complicated, the more it benefits, inures to the benefit of the big businesses and the corporations. Maddie, what do you think as the young man in the group? What's your take on that, Mister 33?
yes, not a lot of wisdom and knowledge and expertise of just life lived, but I will say from my perspective, especially going through the education system, going through college, there comes a line where when you're in a classroom and you're being taught by a teacher that is enforcing a certain thought process on, hey, don't get up. Hey, don't make any more noise. Hey, don't touch that. When you hear that enough as a boy going through elementary, middle school, high school, you start to think of yourself as a problem, because not that you actually are a problem, just based off the framework of where you're at and how everyone should be conducting themselves, boys and girls, that you can't be boisterous. You can't speak out. You can't hold your own opinion. And there's a mindset within, I believe, men that either get complacent and just say, woe is me. I can't beat this. I'm going to continue to always get hit back down when I try to stand up. So I'm just going to stay sitting. And then 50 years go by. They just go to a basic job. They have this drive. They have this adrenaline, but they don't want to use it because of the reinforcement throughout all of their childhood of being, hey, you can't speak out. Hey, you can't say that. Hey, you can't do this. Hey, you can't just get up and run. When in reality, the classroom was not a good framework to begin with for especially boys and young boys growing up. We see them all the time in like kindergarten, elementary, middle school. They're like, boys, you know how boys are in middle school. Well, yes, but that's also just how we were created. That's how we were made. We're not just going to sit there with our hands right in between our legs and say nothing and just sit there. So for me, it's now seeing the side effects of that upbringing, and within certain groups of men within the workforce, within my friend groups, and when men won't speak up because they don't want to fight a battle that they keep getting knocked down about every day. And there's just that mindset shift that either does happen at some point in time after high school and into college, that they're like, you know what, I'm going to do it for myself. I'm going to do it for me because this is what I want for my life, not based off of all the contextual background and my framework of where I was born, who I grew up with, how I was raised. And it's like, this is what I want to do. I got to stand up and go out there and fight that thing. Similar to your point, Jerry, with the living in a cave in your family, there's a lot of guys in today's society that will just sit in the freaking cave. They won't get out. And it's not because they know what's out there and they know they need to battle it. They don't want to get knocked down because they've been knocked down subconsciously all of their life and not being able to stand up and do their own thing. So they're like, I'm complacent. I'm not getting beat up right now. I'm not getting told what to do and what not to do because I'm not doing anything.
And I was when you asked me earlier what I think the difference is, I think part of it is what's happening is the curtain's getting pulled back on the wizard. You know, he seemed all boisterous with a loud voice and everything. And I think there's certain things to do. And I believe, you know, Trump getting elected president and the way he's done business and to his credit, a lot of the people he's put in place, a lot more exposure, a lot more transparency, them being on interviews, being on shows and everything, talking about what they're doing, why they're doing it. I think it's helped men actually see what it's like to be a man that takes a stand against a change. Because I think before this, a lot of them were operating within the narrative. And if you try to fight it within the narrative, you're going to lose because the narrative is set up for you to lose. And so you have to be able to step outside of that, like pull that curtain back and realize that the wizard really isn't all that is. And I think as that happens, then just like in the Wizard of Oz, all of a sudden they were emboldened. They were all scared of it until they realized what it really was. Now the machine's going to fight against you on that because it's going to do everything it can to keep up, you know, its propped up perception of being all powerful, you know, and all knowing and knows the best thing for you. And I think as more as that gets revealed, I think that's part of the reason that's getting young men now, you know, shift to the right. Because it appeals to their nature.
Yeah.
It's who they are. And it's like, you mean I really can be the way I felt all my time? I mean, screw transgenderism. I'm like, well, I always felt like I was a girl. Well, I feel like I'm a man and I haven't been allowed to be who I am. And now you're starting to see glimpses. You see examples again in our government that shows what it's like to take a stand, to get the flack about it, still stand, still push back on it and fight. And I think that's what's instilling a lot of them. I think that's the one thing that could really help us, depending on how long this will last, and how great the movement will be, and will it sustain the momentum it's starting to get will be a key to it. Because all it takes is one election, by example, what's going on in Virginia right now, to see how quickly they'll try to shut all that stuff down and go back to the narrative anytime they can get that control, even though it is, to your point, the control is very much regulatory, depending on if it's in education or it's in business or wherever. They just control by that. And it's something that has no real value to it, except for control in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Matt. I agree that given all of that, and that's where the world is, that men and regardless of your age, I want everybody that will listen to this to hear this, that none of what we are saying, none of what I say is an excuse. So there is no excuse. What Matt said is correct about how boys are treated. What Steve said is correct, I believe, on how men are treated. None of that, men, is an excuse to sit in the cave, to use Matt's example, and not do anything just because it's unfair, just because the world's going to hurt me, just because I'm keep getting pushed down, just because I get taught like a girl, just because I have to think this way, or I'm told to walk this way, or I'm told to behave this way. None of that is an excuse to not go out and try, as hard as it might be, to hit that pterodactyl over the head and drag it back, period. So there are no excuses, but there are realities. And the reality is that young men are struggling today. And they're not struggling because they're weak or they're lazy or they're broken. It's because the deal got changed for them and no one told them. For most of modern history, there was a contract. You worked hard, you showed up, you did your job, you stayed disciplined, and over time, you're going to be able to build a life. You were going to have a house and a wife and a family and respect and stability, and you could one income, you could go, the interest rates weren't crazy, the inflation wasn't mad, the government wasn't stealing your money and devaluing all of the work that you did and pretending it isn't. Exactly why so many young men feel angry or they're lost or they're just numb, because it's impossible to get ahead because your labor, you can't keep up with the inflation. You can't, no matter how much you work, it's not enough money to go ahead and do the things that historically, that contract with civilization, that contract with society that has always been there, is gone because of that money. You can't save your way to a future anymore. You can't work 50 or 60 or 70 hours, and you're still going to fall behind. Think about inflation. Like I said, it does nothing but eat your paycheck. The cost of housing assets have ran away from the regular guy. Gone are the days of being able to, on one average salary, just an average salary, a guy going and working in a warehouse, going and working on an assembly line. I mean, they stole all the assembly lines and they took most of the warehousing and they left behind a husk, a hole. And then they said to the young men, go ahead and just take care of yourself. Meanwhile, the menial jobs that we left behind, inflation is eating up any gains you might get in the average amount of work. Your housing is more expensive, education is more expensive, healthcare is expensive, and it all compounds faster than you can earn. You can't earn your way out of it. So the system now rewards people who either already have money or they're not even trying to build something. Like I said, the poor. So it really benefits and inures to the benefit of the people who don't have or have money, and then to a lesser extent to the people who do have money or who are poor. But those that are just trying to make it, it continues to suck the life out of them. It's not the boys' fault. Some guy looks around and 10 grand doesn't mean anything like it used to. I was going back and forth with some of my operations guys earlier today talking about $10,000 as a matter of fact. And 10 grand just doesn't mean what it did 15 or 20 years ago. In that case, it was, what is, the most ugliest feminist woman in the world, and how much would it cost for us to do something with them? That was the conversation, to be fair.
That's a fair conversation.
Yeah, 10 G's doesn't go as far as it used to. So guy looks around and he realizes it means nothing, and he's been grinding for years and he still has nothing. And he starts asking, and this is the problem. This is what I've always said is a problem: is you start to ask dangerous questions, right? It's like, what's the point? Who follows the rules? Everybody. No one follows the rules. Everybody's getting ahead, but that side doesn't follow their own rules, and this side doesn't follow their own rules, and they're all getting richer. Meanwhile, I'm in the middle following every rule, and I'm getting hosed. So what's the point in even trying? There's no, again, you quickly get a sense of entitlement that the nation's just whole program is rigged. There's no rational response to any of it. Boys are going to end up on the short end of the stick, and that's reality, and they feel it. And they're not even sure what to aim at, right? Do I go be an entrepreneur and start a business? Do I go be useful? What's that look like? Do I go be reliable? What's that look like? You could.
Do I get a girlfriend?
What's that?
I said, do I get a girlfriend? Do I get married?
Do I get a girlfriend? You're a woman, right? A place in the world. The clarity is all gone. Modern feminism didn't just push women forward, it pulled men backwards. And not women. I'm not talking about women specifically. I'm talking about the ideology of feminism. An ideology, it told men that their instincts were toxic, to your point, Matt, that ambition is dangerous, again, to your point, Matt, that leadership is something that's oppressive and you got to just push it all down, and your desire to build and protect and was something that you're supposed to apologize, that you can't leave the cave, that you can't go out in the dangerous grass, you can't go walk among the tall trees where something might get a hold of you and knock something over the head and drag it back. And not just that, but to bring it back with pride, knowing that you accomplished something, and maybe there's a bone sticking out of your arm, maybe you took the worst of it in the fight, but you can't wait to go to sleep so you can get up the next morning and do something for your family and contribute to the civilization that you are trying to build, the way that every single man has done it prior to these last couple of generations. Meanwhile, women are told to delay having family and children, to chase this girl boss, I can beat up Navy SEAL lifestyle, change the status, judge men almost entirely, though, while they're doing that, on money and visibility. You ever notice that? The women just go run to the edge of the earth doing whatever they want. But if men don't have money and visibility, you're nothing. It's like 5% of the men are attractive to most of the women. The thing has flipped upside down. So now you built a world where average men are invisible, average women are dissatisfied, so they're not getting together, and the top few percent of men get all the attention. It's just not natural. It's not stable. It doesn't produce families. It doesn't produce loyalty. There's no meaning. There's no community. There's no civilization. There's no family. It's loneliness. It's porn. It's gambling. It's autism. It's sitting in your room, Oculus glasses, escapism, living in a digital world rather than a real world. Then we pile on more lies that men are the problem. So not only did we do all of this, not only are they only, 40% of people graduating from college, where all of the vast majority of the suicides, where the vast majority of the bankruptcies, where the vast majority of the ODs. I mean, you just look at the numbers. We die younger. They kill themselves more, like I said. They drop out of school a whole lot more. They fall further and further behind, and no one will help them the way that society in the West has come to the help of every other single person and entity other than the man, and in particular, the white boy. And then they blame them for the problems that were created by others. So I'm not saying that that any of this is an excuse, but being told that strong is not something you should do, or it's strong. It's okay to be strong, but you can't be assertive, but you can be responsible, but you can't be in charge. That's an impossible position for a man to live in. And, so what are guys going to do? They're going to quit, and they're going to rot on a couch. Like Matt said, they're going to get bitter. They're going to become radicalized. This is where it really gets bad. They're going to disappear into games, like I said, and porn. But the radicalization the history is very, very clear of what happens to a large group of young men who have nothing to lose. It never ends peacefully. And guess who's going to take the brunt of it? Women. So that's the part that actually matters. And at that point, then nobody gets to be a victim, because men are going to maraud and no one will stop them, because the only reason we have the society we have is because men allow it. Men keep it going. And when men decide, I've had enough, I'm not going to do it, like they have done it throughout all of recorded history, time and time again, in the same scenario, in the same setup as we have today, because it's not fair, and no one is going to come and save everybody from the people who do the saving. But now the people who do the saving are doing the marauding, and history will repeat itself. You can blame politicians, you can blame women, billionaires, immigrants, the system, the past, but
yeah,
I just don't know how this ends in a way that's reasonable. Men, I want to encourage men, you go and get, don't make excuses. Go to the gym, right? Get disciplined, get competent, make yourself extraordinary, get useful, learn how money works. That's a huge one. Build skills that no one can take away from you and can't be ignored. Be responsible over comforts. Quit sitting on the couches and doing nothing, playing video games. You got to take after everything I said, and I'm with you, young men, 100%. You've got to go and take the bull by the horns and drag it down. And you don't do it because the world is fair, but because excellent requires leverage that you have to go learn to experience and then to put out in the world and use to your advantage. And you don't win by whining. You win by becoming ferocious. You win by becoming, no one can deny you. You win by going out and taking. And when men do that, something interesting happens, because all of a sudden the ideology doesn't mean so much to you. All of a sudden you're not a victim. I have never been a victim. You're not looking for scapegoats. You're not looking for validation from others, from a system that's broken, right? You don't want any of that. You want it in and of yourself. And if you do those things that I talk about, all of a sudden you get all of that. And so no matter what they put on you, you don't succumb to them and act in a way that ultimately long-term will not benefit you or your family. You go out and build families and businesses and communities, and those things are so important because men need something to protect. They need something to live for. Men built culture, and it is impossible for them to function inside of a broken culture, so they have to push back against it. But this is not an angry man. This is not a man that wants to crush the world. This is a man, in the physical sense, and hurt people. This is capable men that are capable of that kind of violence. But then you channel it, and you get a purpose, and you learn to manipulate that so that when you have families, you're not going to go burn everything down because you don't want to hurt them. That is what civilization is all about. When you have something to lose, you will defend it to the umpteenth degree. That's why it's so important to have family. That's why it's so important to have children. Without children, there's nothing to defend. And so if the men aren't going to defend anything, civilization will end. And that's what young men need, again, I think. And it doesn't come from therapy. It doesn't come from excuses or blaming anybody. Like I said, it's meaning, responsibility, and have a future worth suffering for. This is what I want the young men to hear me. Go make a world, go make a future that's worth suffering for. It doesn't change the reality of the situation, as I've elucidated, as Matt has, and as Steve has. But you got to become the men who can carry the weight, no matter how heavy it is, and build a life that no one can take from you, and you can't let outside forces impact you. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, that's
the path forward.
Yeah, Jerry, you're preaching to the choir at this point, because I think that's also applicable to business owners, especially men. When you're by yourself trying to figure it out, you're essentially setting yourself up for failure. Failure is going to come regardless. But when you have that brotherhood, when you have that, the closest people around you are lifting you up rather than just keeping you where you're at, or even worse, bringing you down, and that fear of failure stops you from actually trying. And when me and my brothers, when it came to sports, all the time, when we got pissed, we would channel that anger into, we got to do better than the guy right next to me. And the same goes in business. I'm not saying it's a dog eat dog, like we're just trying, like you said, to crush the world physically. It is, hey, you're in a room like the Kronos Group. This is a peer group. We are all business owners fighting the good fight for our businesses, and we want to help each other, but also strengthen each other. And there's going to be times where it's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows. There's going to be some adult conversations, like we said in the past, and you have to be not only okay with hearing that, but listening and trying it for yourself. And if it works, amazing. If it doesn't, that's the beauty of entrepreneurship. That's the beauty of life. We're not guaranteed any amazing results or a next level of success by any means within small business. And so going into that battle, wouldn't you want to have a brother in arm standing next to you, fighting the good fight and heading this right direction? And we're going to get better together. And if you watch my back, I can watch your back, and we'll learn some things along the way. And that's what I'm excited for, especially within the peer group, within the Kronos Group and these cohorts, is because I want to be able to learn new things that I'm still experiencing in real time, being only 33 years old, but being able to pick this up, understand a business situation that I've never even experienced, but being able to listen to it, get the wisdom of the crowd, and then say, oh, this is something I can apply in the future. This is something that I can use to my leverage. And maybe I might not do it the exact same way, but I'm going to do it in a way that I know will at least potentially work for me. And like I said, it's not guaranteed to win.
Yeah, I agree. Steve?
I think a lot of men have, especially entrepreneurs, have this idea like, well, I've got a lot of people that are pulling for me. My wife's pulling for me. I've got friends that are pulling me for it. But it just seems like that a lot of times in those groups, so it gives you a false sense that you do have a support group, but they're the ones least capable of actually helping you. I mean, they're there to help support, and guide you, encourage you, be the cheerleader, for lack of a better word, but they're really not equipped, just like the cave. Going back to that analogy, when you go out, your 10-year-old may say, yeah, let's go get that, but they're not really equipped to help you do that. But you step out of the cave and, you're like, let's get a big haul today. And you look out and Bob stepped out of the cave and Ted stepped out of the cave and like, okay, let's unite together, because you go for the legs. Let's go for a big one. Let's go for the brontosaurus. Okay. You distract them. You get the legs, you get this, and together you can do it. Yeah. You can have your wife definitely want you to bring back food home. Your kids definitely want you to bring back food home. But even though they're on your side, they're really not the best equipped to really help you solve the problems you got, especially as an entrepreneur. So a lot of times you think you have that support group, but it's not really a support group that moves the needle, to use that term. They really can't help you do that as much as a group such as the Kronos Group would do, as far as giving other like-minded people with like-minded goals to give you that perspective, to unite together to help build that business, to help overcome the challenges that a lot of entrepreneurs face when they're just out there trying to do it on their own, just like you experienced when you joined that group, Jerry. It's other ideas like, you go out there like, how am I going to bring this brontosaurus down? Well, this other guy's like, oh, I did it one time when I had this other group, and I know first you got to distract them. Then you got to get the legs down because they're moving, but it's the whole idea of working together with people that have the experience to help you overcome the challenges so that you can accomplish the goal that you're trying to do. In this sense, build a business, build a productive, successful business. And that's where something like the Kronos Group gives you that extra perspective, gives you that extra insight that you alone wouldn't have. Because you figured out, if you want to take 10 years or you take 10 weeks in something like the Kronos Group, and how much could you learn in 10 weeks with the, collective wisdom of what you have in the experience, and then 9 other like-minded individuals that all have different perspectives. They all come from different, right? And they've all experienced something you haven't, guaranteed they've experienced something you have. And they could tell you in one session, something you've been working on for 2 years.
Yeah.
1 hour time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that as we go out the door here, it's important for everybody to hear, any entrepreneurs out there and really people that are trending that way, anybody that's looking for success in life, be it monetary or maybe marriage or kids or family or any of those things, that you got to understand that you need to find people who have done what it is that you're trying to get better at. And your things like an entrepreneur are a very rare group, because there are so few of us relative to everyone else. And everybody outside of being an entrepreneur thinks that they have an idea because they watch social media of what an entrepreneur is. The reality is most of social media is incorrect about what being an entrepreneur is. And so you are surrounded by family and friends and counselors and and community. And those people have no concept of what it is that you are trying to do. So listening to them many times is going to make your life that much harder. It's going to be that much harder for you to navigate a business and operations and hiring and administration and sales and all of those things, and payroll and cash flow crunches and issues regarding all of those things, because they just don't understand. So they're going to give you advice based on a world that does not exist, that they watch online or some story that they read. And the reality is that you need to find people that are just like you, that are going through the same things you are. And trust me, any entrepreneurs out there, if you think that your problems are yours and yours alone, and that almost every other entrepreneur out there hasn't dealt with or is dealing with the same things that you are incorrect. And that's the beautiful thing about the group that I joined 25 years ago, that's still together today, that gave me the ability to be sitting here and have all the success that I did, was that I joined that peer-to-peer mastermind group that was so critical. So we're getting back. The name of the podcast is the Kronos Group. And as we go out, I want to pitch that again. Everybody here is right. Steve and Matt both. We lost Matt because his computer died. But the reality is that if you are running a business and you are doing it on your own, find a mentor. If not a mentor, come and join a group where you get the wisdom of the crowds, like the Kronos Group. 8 to 10 guys get together one time a month, and you get to talk about your business from people who are interested in it. I'm the chairman of it, and then you get an hour with me one-on-one every month in and month out, every month, to talk about your business and my experience, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, a dozen businesses, every up and every down imaginable. You take all of that together, you put it in a stew, and you get to, for a fixed monthly cost and a little bit of time every month, have access to the thing that will help you skyrocket your growth on the big end, something that we all want, maybe help with the little problems that just continue to nag on the smaller end. Both of them can be equally as impactful, and that is the value of a group like the Kronos Group. Go check us out at the Kronos Group, KRONOS, thekronosgroup.org, and you can schedule time to talk to us all you want. With that being said, Steve-O, that was a good one. I think we solved the world's problems relative to a couple of items in this podcast, and let's take us out of here.
Again, that's thekronosgroup.org. And remember, opportunities everywhere. You got to go get them.